I want to, first of all, thank the Office of the Leader of Opposition for this opportunity to come and participate in your budget processes on behalf of civil society and the citizens. Muntu Wawansi. Thank you. The previous presenter has talked a lot about the basics of the budget, so I will deal with the political questions and maybe the constitutional questions, since that is my bias or area I specialize in. Just for purposes of emphasizing a few elements, budget is the most important economic policy tool of the government, and it provides a comprehensive statement of nation's priorities. As representatives of the people, you are always our eyes and ears, and the opposition specifically then becomes the critical voice of the population as the alternative government to come up with pro-people priorities. In the situation we are in, Right Honorable Leader of Opposition, we are in a current fiscal squeeze as a country, but also as a whole group, with a shrinking funding base, including the freeze of donor aid by USAID globally, and that has affected critical sectors, especially health and education in our country. The previous weeks, we saw Parliament debating failure of the Ministry of Education to come up with a A-level curriculum. The process of consultants was being funded by USAID. And the question that Parliament should be asking is who is going to cover the gaps of all sectors in health and education, especially where USAID funds have been withdrawn. Is the current budget framework taking care of that? I was waiting for the director budget to address that. I hope you will get back to that question. Because as a citizen, I expect government to cover its critical sectors like health and education and stop relying on donors and foreigners for these critical sectors of citizens. We have caused a lot of worry to the people living with HIV/AIDS. I know that after the first announcement of donor freeze, the HIV/AIDS clinics called their patients to pick medicine for 6 months. But the political statements going on can also cause some death, because people living on these health drugs don't need to worry about, especially poor people. So if you have people worried about food, most people living with HIV/AIDS, what about a balanced diet? Now they've increased worry of uncertainty over medication. I would expect the leader of opposition and your cabinet, shadow cabinet, to make sure that these critical sectors are covered by government 100%. Whether USAID funds are restored or not, donor funds should go to less critical sectors, and health and education should be funded by government. We also have challenges of public debt, skyrocketing public debt, amidst skyrocketing corruption in the country. The figures that come from the IGG as official funds lost corruption are worrying, but also we know that they are not complete. The money lost corruption is beyond the 10 trillion that the IGG talks about, because the IGG survey did not cover money lost in procurement. Yet that's the biggest chunk of money. Fake deals, fake bidders, where government bids and gives contracts to themselves. That's the biggest chunk of corruption, money lost in this country. The opposition has a duty to offer voters a credible alternative to government in office and to make the majority accountable. I know that LoP and your committees, you chair the accountability committees. I've also seen the leads of these committees in the House, and you're doing a great work. What remains to be seen in the work of Parliament is recovery. Recovery of lost monies. We know that prosecution does not work in this country. We have rule by law, and the government only prosecutes those who oppose it and protects those that it considers their cadres. So it would be good for the leader of opposition and your shadow cabinet to move beyond handing over people to police and ordering recovery. Instead, I think that would benefit a taxpayer more than other monies we spend on fake prosecutions that end in nothing, and that's also loss of taxpayers' money. I don't know whether the laws provide for that, but I'm sure any process can order recovery of money. And I think that would benefit us more as a country. I'm trying not to repeat what has been said, so when I slow down. So the duties of opposition, by their nature, are defined by political behaviors and rules and constitutional norms. This is just like a given. We have structured opposition in Parliament. And the authority, so I want to speak briefly about the authority of Parliament. I know that the Director Budget touched on it. Some of us were at pain when the President wrote that letter on 26th June, or about there. It was published in Monitor on 26th June with a major headline, Budget Crisis. Museveni wants 750 billion reinstated. And part of the contents of this story was that the President read the Riot Act to our honorable members of Parliament. You do not have power over the budget, he vowed. And then, of course, the actions that later happened by the leaders of this institution were unfortunate to some of us. The Director Budget has gone through the details of the laws. The President went ahead to describe the act of reallocating these funds as indiscipline, budget sabotage, and corruption. He further claimed that budget had interfered with the constitutional mandate of the Finance Minister. It's not unusual for the President to act outside the Constitution. He always does. And he's only forced to act within the Constitution by the people. So when he made such ridiculous claims that Parliament has no budget, has no power over the budget, we kept watching as citizens on the stages that Parliament would take. I know some of you tried to push back, but the tyrant of numbers overwhelmed you. But this act, and I saw recently Honorable Shakawanda referring to this letter, this act of ceding your constitutional powers to executive in the budget process, and the assumption, of course the wrong assumption, that Parliament has no power to recommend amendments at committee stage was the most ridiculous, and in our view, the last stroke by the executive in taking away the power of Parliament. It set a very bad precedent because the tyrant of numbers gave in to the demands of the executive, and I don't know how you're going to recover that power in this new process, or whether you can ask Parliament to vacate its own decisions. I don't know, because that was wrong, irregular, and unconstitutional. Parliament has its powers to appropriate. First of all, an appropriation bill is a bill like any other bill of Parliament. Under functions of Parliament, under Article 78, when the executive presents a bill, you debate, propose, amend, and adopt. The wish of us as citizens was that you should have rejected that bulldozing by the executive over the budget, and then because once you pass it the second time, the president has nothing to do. In the worst case scenario, we had hoped that there would be a government shutdown, like we see in developed democracies. Because if the timelines for budget passes, like we see now, Trump is faced with a possible shutdown, a provisional approval of 30 days. If you had rejected for just one day, you would have sent the executive into shutdown. That's what is expected of parliaments. It needs to happen in this country for the citizens to feel the authority of parliament as the temple of democracy in the country. The numbers might not favor you, but the arguments favor you. The arguments favor you. The timings favor you. History favors you. If we can't have a shutdown, let's have a walkout. So that it's registered that opposition proposed a shutdown, and because they were overwhelmed, they marched with their leader of opposition. Because what happened that day was unconstitutional. Parliament under Article 155 must review and recommend changes to the budget. If the executive had not agreed with the changes you proposed, they had time to disagree in the committees. And if they slept on the job, it should not have been your business as the representatives of the people. You can imagine removing money for ambulances to give to donations to companies like LoPo and others as a priority, when we have so many people dying because of lack of ambulances in their constituencies. And the people's representatives gave way. I'm not saying specifically you. I saw most of you disagreeing, but I'm talking of the collective parliament as an institution. So this power must be reclaimed. I don't know how. Maybe LoP, you will raise a motion for parliament to vacate the wrong decision they took, that parliament has no business in the budget business, that your duty is a rubber stamp. I don't know how you're going to go over that wrong precedent that was set, but you need to asserting your functions as clearly stipulated in the Constitution. So what is the critical work of the opposition in the budget process today? The former ones have been stated: scrutinizing the budget, proposing alternatives, engaging in debate like we are doing here, and we thank you for this opportunity. So the fourth role is representing citizens' interests. And in here, Right Honorable Leader of Opposition, I want to propose what I think is the voice of the people through the work that I do as regards the budget. Number one is what you stated in your theme, fighting corruption. And under number one, I propose immediate recovery of monies lost through accountability committees as compared to prosecution. Number two is, of course, people refund the money and vacate offices. I think that would be more effective, in my view, than prosecution. Number two is funding the critical sectors of health and education after donor withdrawal of funds. It's not just USAID that is withdrawing funds from critical sectors. I'm sure you have seen the document from Netherlands, also withdrawing aid from critical sectors. And with the rise in the right-wing movement in Europe, and the need for Europe to cover Ukraine gap caused by Trump and climate change gap, a lot of funds are going to be withdrawn. So it's important for our budget to cover the critical sectors of the population, including health and education. If donor funds are to come, let donor funds go to other sectors. But government must treat its people. We were seeing statements after the passing of the anti-homosexuality bill. The executive rushed to assure citizens that they had money, and USAID, US and World Bank can go to hell. But when it came to the critical time of stopping, closing clinics, stopping aid, the executive is nowhere. So where is that money and that force they were talking with during the enactment of AHA? How come we are not seeing the same assertive force that government can cover its obligations amidst donor freeze? The fourth critical sector, in my view, Right Honorable Leader of Opposition, is control of public debt. Public debt, our skyrocketing public debt, is largely linked to corruption. And we borrow money so that we can steal domestically generated revenue, and the citizens will not be alarmed. We need even to budget for this money that IGG has documented that is lost. If IGG is saying 10 trillion is lost, the executive is saying there will be no more corruption. Can we then say that we shall not borrow until this 10 trillion is seen? Because if everybody is saying there will be no corruption, how come we are still losing money? And the Honorable Leader of Opposition, of course, the issues that recently happened regarding the Ministry of Finance and Bank of Uganda were of great concern to the citizens regarding corruption. If you can have people now deciding to steal money at the source, direct from the treasury, then how safe are we as a country? I know that junior staff have been paraded in the anti-corruption court with the accountant general, but I don't think that is all that there is in Ministry of Finance. Junior staff do not make any approvals. We have all run little organizations or little businesses. We know who signs of money. Those people should be paraded in court. Number 5, the Honorable Leader of Opposition, you need to stop government bailouts. Until when there is a comprehensive audit of all projects where we have had donations of taxpayers' money, including Lubowa Hospital and others, local construction, we also need a public criteria through which private sector can access taxpayers' money, a known public criteria, so that there is equity on who can access taxpayers' money for their business. It's also important to note that almost all companies that where government has bought shares or where bailouts have been made, these companies deliberately keep declaring losses in their audits to defraud citizens. So the other question that we need answered as citizens is, why is it that it's taxpayers' money which goes into loss-making ventures? Why? Everybody posts losses, including Munyonyo. You need to check their audits to the Uganda UDA. You need to check demand for audits of these companies that have received the taxpayers' money or where government has bought shares. They deliberately post losses. Day 1 to day 10, losses. And why should we keep bailing out loss-making ventures as citizens of Uganda? Point number 6, as I conclude on the priorities, is the distortions of the budget through supplementary budgets. It's important to note that supplementary budgets in Uganda, like 90% of supplementary budgets in Uganda, is institutionalized corruption. They do not fit the criteria in the Public Finance Act of unavoidable and unforeseeable, expenditures. They include salaries, they include vehicles, and it's unfortunate that Parliament passes these supplementary budgets. It's just institutionalized corruption. In your alternative budget, you hope that you will declare them as such, and we hope that the other MPs from the other side, who are not voting machines, can then agree with you in some of these instances. And as I conclude, my last point is on the last-minute budgeting, like the last-minute corrigenda that was presented, I think of about 17 trillion, that was presented in the last budget. We need to move or to see Parliament attempting to shut down government. That was unacceptable. It violated all our laws, as has been read by the director budget. It violated all the procedures of budgeting, and the tyrant of numbers approved it, which was very unfortunate. But you need to put government on notice that even if you have small numbers, but as a voice of reason in the country, you will attempt to shut down government in these circumstances. Honorable Leader of Opposition, I think I have voiced the concerns of the people and civil society, and we have confidence in your leadership and your team that our interests will be taken care of. I thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Sarah Bireete, for that very, very, very brilliant presentation. And it's been enriching to the opposition members of Parliament. I believe we have all gotten something out of it, and it's going to take us somewhere as members of Parliament. Honourable members, at this juncture, allow me invite Mr. Pastor.
Olwaleero tubadde ne workshop nga ababaka ab'oludda olwa opposition oludda oluvuganya nga tweteekerateekera budget yaffe gye tuyita alternative budget, kubanga wabeerawo budget eya gavumenti n'ebiseera ebisinga eba tekwatagana na muntu wa bulijjo na muntu wa wansi, ensonga ye ze yalirabye nti wano wakulu aw'okuteeka ssente zinagenda wano oba wali. So ffe buli mwaka tufulumya alternative budget. Naye ku luno twagamba katukyuseemuko mu ngeri gye tukola alternative budget yaffe. Tugamba tugenda kwebuuza ku bantu ab'enjawulo ekizze kitabeerawo nnyo oba olyawo. So twawandikira ebibiina bya opposition era abasinga batuwadde views zaabwe, endowooza zaabwe, civil society organizations ne ba stakeholders abalala nga tubasaba okutuwa input yaabwe era abasinga bazze bagituwa mu buwandiike. Kino bwe twalirabye walina okuteekebwa essira, kino kye tulina okuteekako ennyo amaanyi ku nsonga ya alternative budget, nga twagala alternative budget yaffe weeneefulumira mu bbanga eritali lya wala nnyo, buli munnayuganda n'agitunulako anaalaba ekifaananyi kye mu budget eyo. Ensonga lwaki twasazaawo okutambula bwe tuti. Eno kati workshop ne tufuna n'abalala abazze okuwayamuko naffe okutuwa endowooza zaabwe, nsonga ki ze tulina okuteekako omulaka. So bwe tunaava eno workshop tujja kuddamu tu fine tuning ebyo tubadde tukolako, then eventually tujja kufulumya alternative budget yaffe mu kaseera akatali kawala nnyo. Yes, buli mwaka bwe tukola alternative budget, ffe budget yaffe nga ab'oludda oluvuganya tubeera n'omulamwa theme. Kati theme ey'omwaka guno eri combating corruption, the sure way to effective service delivery. Nti bwe tulwanyisa enguzi tuba tujja kusobola okuweereza bannansi nga ssente weeziri ezikola ku malwaliro, ku byobulamu, ezikola ku by'enguudo, ezikola ku byenjigiriza n'ebirala bingi byonna. Nti kasita tulwanyisa enguzi ng'eggwanga tulina ssente empitirivu. Wano ng'eggwanga twagenda ne tumanyiira abatuvujjirira, abatuwa aid. Ne tuddaawo ne tulemala kwegamba si kulemala naye ne tusigala nga tetwetengeredde kubanga tumanyi obuyambi bujja buli mwaka. Neffe tugamba nti kasa tulwanyisa enguzi ne tukozesa bulungi ssente z'omuwoomusolo, oba oliawo tetwetaaga na aid donations, kubanga ezo nazo zituuka ekiseera ne ziba nga teziriiwo zijjako n'obukwakkulizo strings attached. Naye era nga bwe tuze tulaba akaseera katuuka nga aid eyo tekyaliwo. Kati mwalabye ebya USAID, Trump yavuddeyo n'agamba nti kati bino bikomye. Kati nga gavumenti kyoba otegeeza nti abantu bagenda kufa kubanga ssente ezo zibadde zikwasaganya ebyenjigiriza, ebyobulamu, naddala okusingira ddala ebyobulamu naki. Kati gwe ng'omuzadde oba ogamba nti kakati mujja kufa kubanga bali ababadde batuwa ku ssente tebakyatuwa, ate nga ssente z'omuwoomusolo weeziri. So nga tugamba nti twagala proper accountability, nti ssente y'omuwoomusolo ekozesebwe obulungi. Awo tuba tetulina na kukaabirira muntu yenna tuyambe wano tuyambe wali, kubanga ssente empitirivu zijja oba oliawo ne ku bintu ebitategeerekeka, kubanga twawulidde Trump ye ne administration ne government ye bagamba nti ssente empitirivu ezibadde zijja eno nga mulimu ne ssente zibabadde basindika gavumenti yaabwe okutambuza ensonga ey'ebisiyaga. Era nga ffe tugamba awo nawo twagalawo accountability, kubanga ssente empitirivu ezibadde zijja ku nsonga ez'enjawulo nga mulimu ne ssente ezigenda okuvujjirira ensonga ey'ebisiyaga. Gavumenti tubanja accountability ku nsonga eyo. Gavumenti tugibanja accountability ennyonnyole bannayuganda, kubanga twayise etteeka wano era muzze muwulira agamba bano bapromotinga bisiyaga, bano biki, naye ate Trump ne banne bakola nabo mu gavumenti baga nti Uganda ebadde efuna ssente empitirivu nga mulimu ne ssente ez'ebisiyaga. Kati munnayuganda yeebuuza gavumenti ezo ssente ezo ani abadde azifuna, zibadde zikola ki era nga zipromotinga zitya ebisiyaga? Bannayuganda baagala okutegeera. Kati ebyo byonna tubizingiddemu wali nga ffe tugamba nti aid nene ebadde ejja okuyamba ku byobulamu n'ebirala, nti kakati bwebanga esaliddwako nga gavumenti tugenda gamba abantu nti kakati tewali ddagala, kati mufe mukole ki? Tusobola okukozesa obulungi ssente zaffe, ssente z'omuwoomusolo ne tuweereza bannayuganda. Ffe kati awo tusinga okuteeka omulaga. Well, for us, ffe nga ffe era muzze mulaba nga twanika enguzi eno era nga tugamba abantu bano gavumenti bw'eba eri serious nga ffe bwe tuli ku nsonga ey'enguzi, bagenda ne bagamba zero tolerance to corruption naki, naye ate tuze twanika ababbi ababba ssente y'omuwoomusolo, naye ate gavumenti ne bavaayo, Mwami Museveni n'avaayo nti abantu bano mubaleke kasita ssente ze babba baziteeka wano. Kati ffe tugamba okusookera ddala abantu abo twagala bakwatibwe, twagala kukwatayo abatonotono. Kati ng'ebigenda maaso mu Bank of Uganda bagenze ne bakwata accountant general n'abalala abatonotono, naye abantu abo bali ku level ewa directive nti kakati ssente ezenkana bwe ziti zigende wano oba zigende wali. Mulimu abakulu abatwala ministry eyo, nabo twagala bakwatibwe bakangavulibwe. N'ekirala twagala ssente ezibbibwa zirikaveringibwe. Bw'oba obbye ssente z'omuwoomusolo tekimala gamba nti kakati ono tumututte mu kooti, kubanga batwalayo mu kooti ne babasibako mu rimanda weeks nga 2 ne bavaayo ne biggwa. Twabiraba n'ababaka ba NRM be bakwata wano abaali babba ssente z'omuwoomusolo ne biggwa, ate nga ssente zo zisigala zibbibwa. Kati nga twagala abantu bano bakangavulwe ne ssente zino zikomezebwewo, nti gwe tukwatidde mu kituli ssente ezo zizzeewo. Munnayuganda aleme kuzifiirwa ssente ezo, ozikomyewo. Either tutunde ebintu byo ebibyo, kati ffe zipropose zetuwa, either tutunde ebintu byo paka nga ssente ezo ziddizibwawo. Bwe tukola ekyo abantu bajja kulaba nti ensonga eno ey'okubba ssente y'omuwoomusolo eri serious, kijja kubaziyiza okubba ssente ezo.
Gavumenti esuubira okukozesa over 200 billion mu mwaka gw'ebyensimbi ogujja okulwanyisa obuli bw'enguzi. Olowooza nazo tezigende mu nguzi nga weesuubira okulwanyisa? Is it a solution?
Tulina ebintu bye tulaba ne bitutangaaza. Naffe twalaba abakulu abamu baava mu ggwanga erya Zimbabwe ne bajja wano e Uganda mbu bazze kuyiga engeri ey'okulwanyisa enguzi. Nenga bano bali serious ku kye bakola. Bazze kuyiga engeri ya kulwanyisa nguzi oba bazze kuyiga engeri y'okubbira ddala ssente y'omuwoomusolo? Kubanga kyekiri wano mu ggwanga lyaffe twalabye n'okulaba nti obuwumbi 2 bagenda buteeka mu kulwanyisa enguzi. N'obuuza exactly kikubanga mujja kulaba amawulire nti ne bino bubumbi ebibiri nabo bujja kubbibwa kati sente zirina okukozesebwa okulwanyisa enguzi nazo mujja kuba muli awo nga zibbiddwa. Obuzibu tulina mu ggwanga lyaffe nti enguzi oba okubba ssente y'omuwoomusolo tekiri risiki, si kya bulabe. Waliwo amawanga agamu nga kibeera kya bulabe nnyo okukwata ku ssente y'omuwoomusolo. Bw'ozikwatako bajja kuwanika kalabba, bajja kusiba ebyo byonna babitunde n'ekirala. Kugamba amawanga agali eyo agamu nga okubba ssente y'omuwoomusolo si kyakendeera, katwogere bwe tutyo. Si nti abantu abo oba batya nnyo Katonda oba bantu balungi nnyo, lwakubanga systems zaabwe zikifuula kya bulabe okubba ssente y'omuwoomusolo. Kakati wano Uganda abantu bangi buli Sande babeera mu masinzizo ku Lwokutaano n'ennaku endala, era mu statistics bw'otunula 80% Christian n'abalala naye obubbi obuli wano buyitirivu. Lwaki? Kubanga si kya bulabe. Omuntu amanyi nti ajja kubba ssente y'omuwoomusolo asigale nga yeetaayaya ng'akola ky'ayagala, oluusi bakwatako katono wiiki emu wiiki bbiri ne biggweeraawo. Kati twagala awo tuveewo tujja okusobola okubeera ne ssente ezikwasaganya service delivery, kubanga bano bulijjo betwesibako mu tuyambe donor funds n'ebirala kati kitandise okweyoleka zigenda zikoma. Ate ng'abo nabo tetulina kubeesibako nnyo kubanga tewali muntu akuwa ssente nga za bwereere era ajja sigala akuteekamu omukono kati kola kino, akuwa order ku kiri ng'ayagala ye agenda eyiye yebeera etambula nga bwe tuzze tubira. So today we held this workshop as we shape our alternative budget priorities as the opposition. It's a bit of a different modus operandi this time around. We've made it consultative. We're consulting different opposition political parties, civil society organizations and other stakeholders so that they get to have their input. That way the ordinary Ugandan people will get to see themselves through our alternative budget, which we shall present in not too long from today. Our theme is combating corruption, the sure way to effective service delivery. We are saying when you fight corruption, once we are able to deal with that monster called corruption, we shall have available funds to deal with healthcare, education, infrastructure, and all these other service delivery issues. It is actually very possible because as it is becoming obtrusively clear, donor funds are lessening. USAID is becoming history. Now, government, are you going to tell the people of Uganda that this money we've been getting from USAID for healthcare, education, and so on, all those programs are going to close, people suffering with HIV and AIDS, you're going to die, and so on? No, you've got to find that money within our economy, and that money is available if we're able to deal with the monster called corruption. So we should not always look to relying on foreign donor aid because it comes with strings attached. It is problematic many times. We just saw Trump and his administration, they're actually saying part of the money that was being given to Uganda was to promote LGBT activities. We are demanding for accountability from government. We need to know what exactly was that money doing. The people of Uganda are asking these questions and they have a right to know, to get answers. Yeah? But by and large, we are saying it is very possible for us to take care of our issues using the resources available here. I did see government saying that they want to use 200 billion shillings to fight corruption. It's laughable. In fact, I worry that even that 200 billion shillings itself will be stolen. I saw there is a group of government officials from Zimbabwe that came to Uganda to learn how to fight corruption. I wondered if they take themselves seriously. Because Uganda has mastered the art of corruption. Why? Because we have not made corruption risky. In other countries where corruption is negligible, it's because they have made it risky to steal taxpayers' money. You steal taxpayers' money, you'll be locked up, you'll be hanged, your property will be sold, and so on. And that's why there is limited stealing there. In Uganda, corruption continues to thrive. Why? It's not risky to steal. You steal, you get promoted. You steal, you'll be defended. They'll go after some of these small junior fellows, but the real big thieves will not be touched. That's why it continues to thrive. That's what we need to deal with as a country. Well, I'm glad that we, number one, were able to expose corruption. That's for those who keep saying, including the general public, you know, that we have got limited tools to use to fight corruption. That's the most powerful tool, by the way, that we get to expose it, that we find information about this corruption, we put it out there to the public. It works magically. And I'm glad that the public came on board. You did see the protests. Yes, police and the military kept foiling them and so on. But the public now rose up to realize, wait a minute, this is where our tax money is being stolen from. This is where it is going, and so on and so forth. That's very important for us to do. Yes, our alternatives might not be adopted. We wish they would be adopted. But these fellows know that as soon as they adopt them, that means they're going to become the first victims. But it's important that they are on record, that people get to see there is an alternative that is in place. But number two, that we continuously expose this graft. That's why even new journalists nowadays are being beaten. When you are exposing certain things, whether it be brutality and so on, they know that that's a powerful thing. So we'll keep exposing all the ills there are. Yeah, sadly again, even with the reports that we table, even with the proposals, many times they are disregarded. But like we are saying, even if it were a few of these were to be acted upon, that if somebody steals taxpayers' money, it's not enough to lock them up. We normally see people being jailed, like the most recent time, these NRM MPs who were stealing money. They were arrested, locked up for about 2 weeks, and then freed. And that's where the matters do end. How do you then deter others from stealing? So we are saying, let's go all the way. Lock these people up. There should never be a loss of taxpayers' money. Those people should pay back that money. Let's sell their property. Yes, so that others will realize it is risky to steal. You won't steal and get away with it. So some of the others, they say, let me steal. If I'm to be arrested, I'll be in for just about 2 weeks and I'll come out and enjoy my money. No, we can recover this money from these thieves. We can do lots of things to make sure that it is risky to steal taxpayers' money. The aid it was sending to Uganda, actually, instead of government crying and begging, US, please reinstate this money and so on, let's cut down on the wastages, on the corruption there is. That money can be available. Because now, in 2023, 2024, US aid gave Uganda about 520 million US dollars. That's nearly 2 trillion shillings. We lose over 10 trillion shillings. So don't cry over the 2 trillion shillings, yet you have 10 trillion that you lose to stealing. Deal with that theft, such that money will be available. So we are saying, let's deal with those accountability issues. But also, the people of Uganda are asking for accountability from government. Trump's administration is saying part of the money that was coming through US aid was to promote LGBT activities. And Ugandans are alarmed. They're saying, government, wait a minute. You're telling us you're fighting LGBT issues as Parliament will pass a law, but behind the backs of Ugandans, government is doing something else. We are demanding for that accountability.